Welcome to Self-Care Prescriptions.
This is your invitation really to just take a break.
Tune in and tune up with practical tips on taking better care of your mind, body, and soul.
We're going to create a safe space here for you to really let it go.
This is your safe space to help you work on you, your mental health, and overall wellness.
Nothing average about that at all.
This is Self-Care Prescriptions with Dr. Robin Gobin. Your weekly dose starts now.
We're coming to you with another episode of Self-Care Prescriptions, and this week is a special week because it's Mental Illness Awareness Week, and today is actual special day because it's World Mental Health Day. It seems like all this goes hand in hand with self-care. So Dr. Robin, explain this to me.
Yeah, so definitely mental health is a part of self-care. Self-care is a larger umbrella that encompasses all different ways that you can take care of yourself. But definitely one of the ways that we can take care of ourselves and one of the parts of our body that deserves special care is our brain and our mind. So this is perfect that we're recording this during this week.
So Mental Health Week, mental illness, and I just get caught up hearing mental illness, right? So pardon my ignorance and pardon anybody listening, but I'm gonna keep it real. Mental illness mean like you crazy, and like you belong in like a mental ward, or like you should begin to check. No,
I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people think that, and that's actually why they created this National Mental Illness Awareness Week, is because so many people believe that. They think that just because you have a mental illness, a mental health disorder, that somehow you're crazy. But that actually does not mean that you're crazy. And so I want to be very clear about this. In my perception and what I hope to engender to the public through my teaching, through all of the talking, the workshops that I do, is that having a mental illness does not mean that you are crazy. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're unpredictable. It doesn't mean that you're dangerous. And it also does not mean that you are incapable of working or having healthy relationships. I think we have to dispel that and stop saying that about people who have mental illness. Mental illness is no different than somebody having diabetes or someone having heart disease. So it's just a different part of the body that is ill, that is not functioning properly. And so when we say that people are crazy, that is really derogatory and is very insulting, because basically what we're saying is that they somehow are less than other people who don't have mental illness. And what we know is that more than 50% of Americans will experience or be diagnosed with a mental illness at some point in their lifetime. So mental health issues are among some of the most common of the health issues in the world. And so every year, what we know is that 1 in 5 people, so if you're hanging with 5 of your friends, one of y'all will have a mental health issue. We know that 1 in 5 Americans in a year will be diagnosed with a mental health issue. So I don't see why we continue to treat mental illness like it's rare, like it's for those people, something wrong with those people, when really, like I said, it's no different than some other part of your body being hurt in some way. So if you have an issue with your leg, if your leg is broken, that might impact the way that you feel. You're going to feel some pain. It might impact your mood. It might impact your behaviors, and it might impact your emotions. And so in the same way with a mental illness, it just means that you have symptoms that are impacting your behaviors, your mood, or the way that you think, the way that you perceive things, the way that you look at the world. But it doesn't mean that you are broken, that you are weaker than other people. It just means that you are human. And as humans, we are vulnerable to getting all kinds of illnesses. Our bodies are really vulnerable. So just like when you fly, sometimes people, when they fly, they end up just getting sick. They end up catching a cold because their bodies are vulnerable. And that just shows that we as humans are just vulnerable. So it's not the fact that something is wrong with people if they develop a mental health issue. It's just that a constellation of factors came together that maybe led to them developing a mental health issue.
So just because you're seeing a psychologist or a therapist doesn't mean you crazy. It just means that you're going through something and it's actually okay to not be okay.
Yes, like just like you would go see a doctor if you were skateboarding and you broke your ankle, you go see a mental health professional when you notice that your brain is not kind of functioning the way it used to, or you're feeling your mood is more down than it used to be.
Gotcha. So I'm feeling this. So it's okay to not be okay. It's okay. Your brain is functioning like your leg and your arm. So it's okay to get those things checked out. So I'm feeling this. You're giving me a couple of, you bring a myth buster right now. You busted the myth of you ain't crazy because you seeing a psychologist, because you seeing a shrink or seeing a therapist. So no. I get it. So give me some other myth busters here, since we breaking myths and stuff here.
Yeah. So one other thing that I wanted to touch on too is that people do not cause themselves to have mental health issues. So I think a lot of times when we see people with like depression or with anxiety, we just say, well, why don't you just stop worrying so much? Or why don't you just like shake it off? Like everybody has days when they're sad. Why are you sad all the time? You just need to man up or woman up and get over it and put on a happy face or think happy thoughts. And depression is more than that. It's harder than that. Like people have a lot of real symptoms that are impacting them in a very significant way, making it hard for them to actually function in their life and do the things that we feel like are easy to do. So what we know, though, is that those symptoms come about from a variety of different ways. So sometimes it can be biological, like genetic. If someone in your family, maybe your parents, had a mental health issue, that could increase your vulnerability for developing a mental health issue. We also know that there are environmental factors, social factors. So if you are exposed to trauma, you might end up developing a mental health issue that might increase your vulnerability for developing a mental health issue. There's also psychological factors. So say in the aftermath of trauma, you are just so tormented by those memories and those thoughts that you end up drinking alcohol just so that you can kind of numb yourself out and you don't have to think about those memories because they're scary and they're upsetting. And so then that can play a role in you potentially developing a mental health issue. So there's all of these factors, environmental factors, biological factors, as well as social and psychological factors. And so we can't rule that out. And it's really unfair when we look at someone and see their mental illness or see them struggling and then just somehow come to the conclusion that they made themselves that way or they just need to snap out of it. It wasn't them. It wasn't something that they did to themselves.
So your environment, what you're going through, can cause you to have an issue. And it's not that, oh, you brought this on yourself, and to be passing judgment on people saying they're bringing it on themselves. Is to actually not be judgmental, and just to understand that it's not meant for everybody to be okay 100% of the time.
Exactly. When you catch a cold, is it your fault you caught a cold? Would you say that? It's your fault you caught a cold?
Well, you would say it's your fault if you went outside without a hood, without a jacket on, you went outside without a skull cap on. Like, hey, you brought that on yourself.
But there are so many other times that you can go outside without a skull cap on and you don't catch a cold. So what made this time different? You can't really say that it's your fault that you didn't try to catch a cold, did you? Like, even though you may have went outside, was that your intent to catch a cold?
You're right.
No, it wasn't your intent to catch a cold. So we can't say that just because someone's struggling that they brought it on themselves or that they want to be down or they just like attention. That's another thing we like to say about people who experience mental health issues is they're just like trying to grab for attention all the time. And that's not the case either. Sometimes people are just really struggling. They might not have the most effective way to express their need or their desire for support or help. And it could be annoying or irritating to you, or maybe it's ineffective the way that they reach out for help or cry out for help. But that doesn't mean that they're faking it or that they just want attention and they're intentionally acting that way.
Gotcha. So don't always pass judgment. And even though it seemed like they brought it on themselves or it seemed like they're looking for some attention, they might actually be struggling with something, and we should take that for what it is and not just be like, oh, they crazy, they looking for attention. Just understand that people go through things. Yes,
people go through things. We all go through things. Even if you are not diagnosed with a mental health issue, We all have times of sadness. We all have fears. We all have times of struggle where we feel like we may not be reaching our full potential in life. We all know grief. We all know pain. And so when you encounter someone with a mental health issue, if you yourself don't have one, I would encourage you to like dig down deep and find some empathy. Like, remember the last time you cried, or remember the last time you were really struggling in your life and what that felt like. And can you have that same empathy for people in your family or in your friendship circle, or maybe people on your job who you work with who have mental health issues, and not be so quick to judge them and not be so quick to just dismiss their issues and thinking that that's not as important. Because if someone told you that they were just diagnosed with diabetes, or they were just, diagnosed with an illness that's really gonna forever change their life, you would have so much sympathy for them and be like, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. But we don't have that same way of looking at mental health issues. And so the whole goal of these efforts, like with Mental Illness Awareness Week and World Mental Health Awareness Day, is just all about reducing the stigma and helping us all to realize that mental health should not be like a stepchild when we think about overall health. Like, it is on the same level as physical health, and we should treat it just as important and just as integral to us maintaining our overall health.
Yeah, you saying some cool stuff here, because I'm sitting here thinking, right? And I'm thinking, all right, if the brain don't work, the arm don't work, because the brain tell the arm to move and function, right?
Exactly.
So if you really break it down and think about it, the brain is important. It's best to take care of the brain, because if the brain ain't functioning right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, if the brain's not functioning right, nothing's really going to function right. And that's why they started to say there is no health without mental health. So we can't talk about health if we're not including mental health. We have to include that in the conversation.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So you hitting us with some good stuff here and some good things to think about. And you broke it down very elementary to me to make me actually think differently now and not pass judgment. So any other myths or any other thing that we can dispel while we having this convo?
Yeah. So one more that I think is really important is this idea that people with mental health issues are dangerous or they're violent. That's actually more of the exception than the rule. So it's not the case that people with mental health issues are dangerous or are violent. It's actually very rare. And when we look at the data or statistics, when we look at the violent crimes that have been committed in the United States, what we see is only 5% of those violent crimes were committed by people with a serious mental illness. So when we start to talk about people having mental health issues, I get in the image of my mind of like maybe someone who's, homeless or on the street. And a lot of times people shy away or they get scared when they walk by. But actually, there's no reason to fear someone who has a mental illness. Even if they have schizophrenia, they're talking to themselves, they're hearing things that other people don't hear. Even in that case, these people are not dangerous. They're not a danger to you. And so there's no reason for you to, grip your purse or be scared when you walk by or try to, stay away from these people. So we have to stop that as well. Like, kind of start to question, like, why am I feeling afraid because I'm around someone who has a mental health issue? Because that doesn't reflects reality. They're not more likely to be violent than anyone else or more dangerous than anyone else in most instances.
Yeah, you saying in most instances, but to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
I'm walking down the street, man standing on the corner. He asking for some change and he's singing to himself. Like, ain't that human nature to think, hey man, he might be crazy?
Why would you think he was crazy though? What about that? Some people just talk to themselves. Like I talk to myself.
Well, going back on your whole 1 out of 5 thing, 1 out of 5 people ain't standing there singing to themselves, and it just seemed like he might be unstable. So I think you pass judgment and be like, well, I'd rather play it safe than sorry. Let me make sure. Let me grab my purse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of times that's our natural impulse, like something in us tells us that this is dangerous. But what I am encouraging us to do is start to question that and to start hold those assumptions lightly that we make about people who have mental health issues, because like I said, it's very rare that they are dangerous. And the 1 in 5 comment was that I said 1 in 5 Americans will be diagnosed with a mental health issue throughout a given year. But the thing that still remains is only 5% of violent crimes are committed by someone who is seriously mentally ill. And so people who have mental health issues are rarely a danger to themselves or to other people. And in fact, they sometimes are more likely to be targeted by people who are on an agenda to hurt someone or take advantage of someone because people can see their vulnerability.
Gotcha. It makes sense. And it go back to the simple part. Don't pass judgment, understand and have more empathy, knowing that people are going through some things and they might not be all right today, or they might be going through a season in their life. So,
and I'm glad you said that too about the season, because that's also important, that sometimes when people are having a mental health issue, that doesn't mean that they don't have periods of where they're doing okay, where they experience mental health and where they have a good mood. And it doesn't mean that they can't be a valuable person on their job or their workforce. And so we shouldn't look at them as weak or incapable of doing things in their life, because like I said, you can have a mental illness and still have healthy relationships. You can still make valuable contributions to society. And it's not a life sentence. That doesn't mean that just because you're diagnosed with a mental health issue that you will always have that mental health issue, or that it will always impact your functioning in a significant way.
Gotcha. So it makes sense. So now it's the good part. Bless us with some info and some knowledge on how we can take care of our brain, how we can take care of ourselves and actually not go crazy. Well, I'm using the wrong term. Crazy ain't the right thing. I'm not politically correct. But give us some self-care on how we can take care of ourselves and our mental well-being, if that's the right word.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for correcting yourself. And that's what it's all about. Like, we won't unwire, because some of this stuff that we've internalized, we've heard it over and over again. And so it just like slips out. But it's about us being able to catch ourselves and say, how can I think about this differently? But to get back to your question, I think one of the things that we can do to help improve our mental health or boost our mental health is just be knowledgeable about what our mental health is and what mental illnesses are. So educate yourself. Don't kind of fester in ignorance. If you don't know anything about what depression is or what anxiety is, like, start to educate yourself. And one of the great resources that I would encourage people to look into is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So the acronym for that is NAMI. Again, it's National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they're really cool because they're an advocacy group that actually was developed by people who have mental health challenges. And the goal of NAMI is to support people with mental health issues, as well as their family members, their communities, and also go out and educate the public about mental health challenges. So they have a wealth of resources on their website that will give you accurate information about what mental health challenges are and what you can do to boost your own mental health. And they have a wealth of people who actually go out in communities. So every state across the United States has a NAMI headquarters, and then there's also NAMIs in various cities. And so you can look up your city and find the local NAMI and go to support groups, meetings. They host those. And they also have people that go out in communities who actually have mental health issues and can talk about lived experiences, because I think it's something so powerful and value about hearing from those people themselves, because that's really a huge way to reduce the stigma and to help people see that people with mental health issues are normal people, just like you and I are normal people.
Right. So read up on it, and then potentially looking to go into support groups or figuring out your city, your state, seeing what resources they actually have available. Cool. That makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times we go through things, we Google it, and Google's the answer, you know what I mean? But actually look up someone who actually does this for a living, is giving you legit info.
Accurate information.
Accurate info. There we go. So what's anything else as far as self-care to take care of ourselves? What else can we do to take care of our mental health?
You know what I'm going to say. The number one thing you can do if you feel like you are struggling or that you might benefit from a boost or enhancing your mental health is to go see a therapist. So reaching out, looking at a directory, seeing what therapists are in your area. Oftentimes, therapy is covered by your healthcare insurance. So I encourage you to look into the healthcare insurance that you have, look at what's offered, what's provided. Usually you want to look for an in-network provider, just like you do for a doctor. You want to look for a psychologist who's in-network, who's covered by your insurance, and you might just have a very small copay to pay. So I encourage people to be open to that. And another thing that I want to say about that is that you don't have to be seriously mentally ill in order to benefit from therapy. Like there's a lot of times where people are just going through a season in their life where their world has been turned upside down. Maybe you just got laid off from a job that you were working on for 20 years and you were expecting to work there for another 20 years and your whole life plan has gotten thrown off. Or maybe you just experienced a traumatic experience in your life or death of a loved one and you're having trouble coping. There is no shame in going to see a therapist to help you get through struggles that you have. They have a objective experience, and also they have that perspective that is different than maybe your friends, your family, and that can be helpful too, to have someone who has no stake in the game, who can give you some real tips, some real coping strategies, and really just be a sounding board. Sometimes it can be so helpful to just talk about all the things that are going on in your head and have someone to summarize it for you, have someone to share their perspective on what you're saying. And it also can help you to learn more about yourself and have a deeper level of self-awareness, and then also know how to progress in your life and how you want to move forward. So I'm a huge advocate for therapy, particularly in our African American community where there is still a huge stigma. I love that people on social media are really hyping it up more these days and kind of being more transparent about going to therapy. We see it on reality TV where folks are saying that they're going to see their therapist. So I think we have to keep going in that direction of making going to therapy and doing things to actually better and enhance your mental health important, because we know that we're supposed to eat healthy and exercise to keep our body healthy. What are we doing to keep our brain healthy and sharp?
Gotcha. So do some research, consider getting a therapist. Two cool and key ingredients to get you on the right track of taking care of your mental health.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to hit us with before we close out?
Just that I would highly suggest you looking into NAMI, looking into those resources, again, educating yourself about what mental illness is and what mental health is, and seeing if you might yourself benefit from a therapist, and then educating yourself too about what therapists are out there in your community and how you might be able to benefit from talking to someone about your mental health issues.
Gotcha. So we got those key things. If people get lost in the sauce when they're looking this up or have any questions or concerns, are you here to help them, or can they reach out to you to point them in the right direction or answer a question from a trained professional?
Of course. Yeah, you can always hit me up on Instagram at Dr. Robin Gobin, on Facebook at Dr. Robin Gobin, and I'd be happy to, point you in the right direction, point you to some directories that I found helpful as far as helping people to locate a therapist that's the right fit for them. And that's another piece too that I will say about therapy is that when you go, you have to give it time. It's awkward the first session like that. It's awkward to go to someone new and kind of talk about really personal, private things. So give it some time. Get to know the person, the therapist. And I will say that sometimes it might not be the right fit for you, the first person that you get with. Don't let that discourage you. Try someone else. Sometimes it just takes you finding the right fit and finding someone who gets you, who understands your worldview, your cultural values, who respects your cultural values, who can help you navigate life's challenges. So don't give up if you face adversity during this process, because just like anything else, it takes time. The healing process often is not straightforward. You might, take a couple of steps forward and take 5 steps back, but don't give up on yourself and don't give up on the process, because you deserve to have a healthy mind.
That's what's up. Well, we appreciate the information. I'm sure the audience will find it very helpful. It's very, very insightful, knowledgeable, and practical things to actually do. And it's really good to see that it's actually Mental Health Day and Mental Illness Week. So it's really good to see that it's actually being pushed in the media this week and actually today. So appreciate you, and we look forward to the next podcast.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for taking better care of you and for listening to another episode of Self-Care Prescriptions. Stay connected and tuned up with Dr. Robin Gobin. Visit robingobin.com or follow us on all platforms at Dr. Robin Gobin. Stay healthy and stay balanced with Self-Care Prescriptions.